wave of protests that we saw outside the Bell Hotel, a hotel housing asylum seekers, and right across the country, but said that it's evident to the judge that Kibatu's shame and remorse isn't because of the offences committed, but instead because of the impact they've had. Now, in Chelmsford Magistrates Court today, they heard a victim impact statement from that 14-year-old girl who said that...
When justice meets politics, the Epping hotel case that shook Britain. Right then, before we dive into what might be one of the most explosive cases to hit British headlines this year, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to be notified when we dissect the political earthquakes that follow stories like this one. Because what happened in Epping isn't just about one man's crimes. It's about the seismic political aftershocks that are still reverberating through Westminster corridors today. Now, picture this. Keir Starmer sits in number 10. Wrestling with an immigration system that's more fractured than a dropped iPhone screen, when suddenly Essex explodes into the headlines. Not for its charming countryside or its proximity to London, mind you, but because a single asylum seeker's actions have just handed the Conservative opposition exactly the ammunition they've been desperately seeking. The timing? Absolutely catastrophic for Labour's carefully crafted narrative on immigration reform. 8 days. That's all it took. 8 measly days between Hamish Kebatu stepping foot on British soil and committing sexual offences that would not only destroy young lives but ignite political fury across the nation. 8 days that have become a political weapon sharper than any parliamentary debate could ever be. But here's where the story gets properly sinister, and I do mean sinister in every sense of the word. Kebatu didn't just commit these crimes in some anonymous corner of Britain. He did it in Epping, a constituency that political strategists know represents the very heart of Middle England, the kind of place where election battles are won and lost, where public opinion crystallizes into voting patterns that can topple governments. The details are frankly stomach-turning. A 14-year-old girl, innocently enjoying pizza with a friend in Epping town centre, becomes a target of a predator who had travelled thousands of miles across continents only to prey upon British children within his first week of arrival. The audacity is breathtaking, the political implications explosive, and the human cost absolutely devastating. Let's be crystal clear about what happened here, because the political spin machines will try to muddy these waters until they are darker than Thames sludge. Kebatu approached these children, let that word sink in, and told them it would make good wives if they returned to Africa with him. He offered to impregnate both the 14-year-old victim and her friend, declaring with chilling casualness that age did not matter when the terrified girl reminded him she was just 14 years old. But the predatory behavior didn't stop there, and here's where every parent watching this will feel their blood pressure spike. The following day, this man, the supposed asylum seeker fleeing persecution, positioned himself on a bench and began complimenting the same child appearance before attempting to kiss her and placing his hand on her thigh. When she froze in terror, when her body language screamed rejection, when every decent human instinct should have kicked in, Kebatu continued his assault. And if that wasn't sufficiently revolting, he then sexually assaulted an adult woman who had been attempting to help him with his CV. Read that again. A woman trying to assist an asylum seeker with finding employment becomes his next victim, the very embodiment of British compassion and community spirit, twisted into vulnerability by a predator who saw kindness as weakness to exploit. The political ramifications began almost immediately. The Bell Hotel in Epping, where Kebatu was housed at taxpayer expense, became the focal point for mass demonstrations. Not the carefully orchestrated political theatre we're accustomed to seeing outside Parliament, but raw, genuine fury from ordinary British people who had watched their community become a hunting ground for a foreign criminal. Now here's where the legal system intersects with political reality in ways that should make every politician squirm. Under the UK Borders Act 2007, any foreign national convicted of an offence carrying a custodial sentence of at least 12 months must face deportation proceedings. It's not discretionary, it's not subject to political whim, it's mandatory. Kebatu received exactly 12 months, triggering automatic deportation procedures that the Home Office cannot legally avoid. But here's a delicious political irony that opposition researchers are probably framing for Christmas. Kebatu's own barrister declared that her client's firm wishes to be deported as soon as possible. Picture that. A convicted sex offender is literally begging to leave Britain, while the government that promised control immigration finds itself legally obligated to spend thousands more pounds processing his deportation rather than simply opening the door and waving goodbye. The courtroom scenes would be almost farcical if they weren't so deeply disturbing. District Judge Christopher Williams didn't mince words, describing Kebetu's actions as disgusting and sickening, while noting that the defendant had attempted to portray himself as a victim. The sheer audacity is mind-boggling. A man who sexually assaults children and women claiming victimhood, while his actions trigger mass civil unrest. But here's a detail that should send shivers down every politician's spine. Kebetu told the court he was unaware how stringent the UK's laws were. Think about that statement for a moment. Either our asylum processing system is so woefully inadequate that newcomers aren't informed about British law, or we're expected to believe that sexual assault is somehow acceptable in whatever legal framework this man previously operated under. Neither explanation reflects well on current immigration policy. The financial details are equally politically toxic. Kebetu admitted paying €2,500, that's £2,155 in real money, to human traffickers for passage on a rubber dinghy across the Channel. While British families struggle with energy bills and mortgage rates, criminal networks are profiting handsomely from a migration route that deposits sex offenders directly into British communities. The optics couldn't be worse for any government claiming to have immigration under control. Even more politically damaging is the timeline. Kebetu's journey took him through Sudan, Libya, Italy, and France before reaching British shores. That's 4 separate countries where he could have claimed asylum, for separate safe havens where his alleged persecution could have ended. Instead, he specifically targeted Britain, paying a premium price to criminal networks for the privilege. This isn't asylum seeking. This is destination shopping, and the destination chosen was our country. The psychological impact on victims adds another layer of political dynamite. The 14-year-old victim's statement to the court was heartbreaking. Every time I go out with my friends, I'm checking over my shoulder. A British child, in a British town, traumatized by a foreign criminal who should never have been in a position to harm her. Every parent in the country can imagine their own child making that statement, and that emotional connection translates directly into political pressure. District Judge Williams delivered perhaps the most politically significant observation during sentencing. He noted that Kebetu had become visibly aroused when encouraging the young girl to kiss another child while he watched. This wasn't opportunistic criminality or cultural misunderstanding. This was calculated predatory behavior of the most depraved sort. The judge identified Kebetu as presenting a significant risk of reoffending, meaning the British taxpayer now faces ongoing costs for monitoring an eventual deportation proceeding for a criminal who should never have entered the country. The community response in Epping tells us everything about the political mood music surrounding this case. These weren't professional protesters or political activists. These were ordinary residents expressing genuine outrage that their town had become a backdrop for such horrific crimes. When prosecutors noted that the circumstances had left Epping in turmoil and brought many other migrants into trouble, they highlighted the broader political consequences of individual criminal acts. Stuart Hooper, Essex Police's Assistant Chief Constable, praised the victim's courage while carefully avoiding any political commentary. But his words carried political weight nonetheless. They came forward and trusted us with their experience. Trust in institutions, trust in the justice system, trust in the government's ability to protect British citizens, all hanging in the balance of cases like this one. The attempted suicide in prison adds yet another political dimension. Kebetu apparently couldn't cope with the knowledge that his actions had sparked mass demonstrations across Britain. Even a convicted sex offender understood the political firestorm he had ignited, recognizing that his crimes had damaged not just his victims, but the entire asylum system's credibility. Here's what makes this case politically nuclear. It provides a perfect storm of everything voters fear about uncontrolled immigration. Criminal behavior, violence against children, exploitation of British hospitality, massive cost to taxpayers, and a legal system apparently powerless to prevent any of it. Opposition parties don't need to manufacture outrage. The facts speak volumes. The broader implications for Labour's immigration policy are seismic. How do you argue for compassionate asylum procedures when cases like this demonstrate such spectacular failures in assessment and monitoring? How do you defend hotel accommodation for asylum seekers when one becomes a base of operations for a predatory criminal? How do you maintain public support for humanitarian obligations when the humanitarian instinct is so grotesquely abused? But perhaps most politically damaging of all is the simple timeline. 8 days. In 8 days, a man traveled from arrival in Britain to conviction-worthy sexual offences against British children. 8 days during which every safeguard, every assessment procedure, every monitoring system failed completely. 8 days that have become a political weapon that will be wielded in Parliament for months to come. The Conservative Party must be salivating at the political opportunities this case presents. Here's a Labour government, elected partly on promises of competent governance and public safety, presiding over an immigration system so dysfunctional that convicted sex offenders are processed faster than legitimate asylum claims are resolved. The irony is bitter enough to taste, and there's more political poison to come. The deportation proceedings will inevitably face legal challenges, human rights appeals, and procedural delays that could stretch for years. Every month Kebetu remains in British custody costs taxpayers thousands of pounds while providing opposition politicians with fresh ammunition about governmental incompetence. The Epping hotel itself has become politically symbolic. Once a routine accommodation provider earning taxpayer money for housing asylum seekers, it's now forever associated with one of the most disturbing criminal cases in recent memory. Local Conservative politicians must be drafting press releases about Labour's failure to protect communities, while Labour MPs are probably avoiding Epping entirely. What makes this case politically unique is its resistance to spin or interpretation. These aren't complex policy debates about immigration quotas or processing procedures. These are simple facts about criminal behavior by someone who shouldn't have been in the country. No amount of political messaging can soften the reality of a 14-year-old girl being sexually assaulted by an asylum seeker within his first week of arrival. The financial cost alone should give Treasury officials nightmares. Hotel accommodation, legal proceedings, prison costs, deportation procedures, victim support, police investigations, court time, all accumulating into a massive taxpayer bill for processing one criminal who paid smugglers for illegal entry. The mathematics of immigration policy couldn't be more politically toxic. The case also highlights a complete breakdown of risk assessment procedures. How does someone travel across multiple continents, interact with various officials and agencies, undergo asylum processing, and get housed in community accommodation without any indication of predatory tendencies? Either the system is fundamentally broken or it's designed to ignore warning signs that might slow down processing. For Keir Starmer personally, this case represents a nightmare scenario. A former director of public prosecutions, he understands better than most politicians how cases like this resonate with voters. He knows that public confidence in the justice system depends on preventing crimes, not just prosecuting them after children have been traumatized. He knows that every detail of this case will be weaponized against Labour's immigration policies. The political timing couldn't be worse for Labour. Just as a party attempt to establish credibility on law and order issues, along comes a case that encapsulates every voter concern about immigration-related crime. It's a gift-wrapped present for conservative opposition researchers, complete with quotes from judges, testimony from victims, and documented failures across multiple government departments. Looking forward, this case will inevitably become a template for political attacks. Every immigration debate will reference Epping. Every asylum policy discussion will mention Kebetu. Every government defense of humanitarian obligations will be met with demands for explanations about 8-day processing failures. The political half-life of this case will stretch far beyond the news cycle. The human cost remains paramount, but the political consequences are equally significant. 2 lives changed forever by criminal actions that competent immigration policies should have prevented. A community traumatized by failures in systems they trusted to protect them. A country questioning whether compassionate asylum policies are compatible with public safety. As Kebetu faces deportation proceedings that could drag through appeals and delays for years, British taxpayers will continue funding his accommodation, legal representation, and court appearances. Every pound spent will be a political reminder of systemic failure. Every procedural delay will generate fresh headlines about governmental incompetence. For Keir Starmer personally, this case represents a nightmare scenario. A former director of public prosecutions, he understands better than most politicians how cases like this resonate with voters. He knows that public confidence in the justice system depends on preventing crimes, not just prosecuting them after children have been traumatized. He knows that every detail of this case will be weaponized against Labour's immigration policies. The political timing couldn't be worse for Labour. Just as a party attempt to establish credibility on law and order issues, along comes a case that encapsulates every voter concern about immigration-related crime. It's a gift-wrapped present for conservative opposition researchers, complete with quotes from judges, testimony from victims, and documented failures across multiple government departments. Looking forward, this case will inevitably become a template for political attacks. Every immigration debate will reference Epping. Every asylum policy discussion will mention Kebitu. Every government defense of humanitarian obligations will be met with demands or explanations about 8-day processing failures. The political half-life of this case will stretch far beyond the news cycle. The human cost remains paramount, but the political consequences are equally significant. 2 lives changed forever by criminal actions that competent immigration policies should have prevented. A community traumatized by failures in systems they trusted to protect them. A country questioning whether compassionate asylum policies are compatible with public safety. As Kebitu faces deportation proceedings that could drag through appeals and delays for years, British taxpayers will continue funding his accommodation, legal representation, and court appearances. Every pound spent will be a political reminder of systemic failure. Every procedural delay will generate fresh headlines about governmental incompetence. The Epping case isn't just about one criminal or even one failure of immigration policy. It's about the complete breakdown of public trust in systems that promise to protect British communities while showing compassion to genuine asylum seekers. It's about political promises confronting brutal reality. It's about the price of getting immigration policy catastrophically wrong. This story won't disappear from political discourse anytime soon. It's too perfect, too comprehensive, too devastating for opposition parties to ignore. Kebitu may want to be deported as soon as possible, but the political damage from his crimes will linger in British politics for years to come. The 8 days that changed everything in Epping have created political aftershocks that will reverberate through Westminster long after the last appeal is heard and the final deportation order is signed. That's the brutal reality of politics meeting justice in modern Britain. Sometimes a single case can illuminate failures so profound, consequences so severe, that they reshape entire policy debates. The Epping Hotel case isn't just crime news, it's political dynamite that will keep exploding long after the headlines fade. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because cases like this prove that British politics never sleeps, and neither should your awareness of the forces shaping our nation's future. Until next time, this has been UK Connors, and remember, in politics, as in justice, the details always matter more than the spin.